everyone to our last panel of the afternoon. We're going to talk about cosplay gaming platforms, animated gaming platforms in Barbados. Imagine, if you will, an environment based on Barbados' history and heritage, where you can visit sites like Newton Enslaved Burial Ground, where you can explore historic Bridgetown, but you're not exploring the historic Bridgetown of today, you're exploring the historic Bridgetown of maybe 100 years ago. Imagine, if you will, being able to choose your avatar. If you want to be an Obia man, if you want to be a healer, if you want to be someone who practices the science of the stick, if you want to do stick licking, but you're doing all of this in a virtual environment based on the history and heritage of Barbados. That's what we're here to talk about this evening.
Hi, good evening, guys. I was Kay Hall and Omar Kennedy, and I am Kay. Introduce yourself. Everyone knows Kay. I really didn't need to say anything. So, anyways, I'm Omar Kennedy. I'm the head of AnimeCon, and recently, during the COVID pandemic, AnimeCon, just like other businesses, had to pivot, and in our pivoting process, we decided to open a video game development company. And Anna Young, one of the heads of AnimeCon, she is the marketing head. I handle the business development, and we have Michael Watkins here, who handles all of our technical stuff. And we have Michelle Hinson Cox, we have Xavier Jean-Claire. We're all here to discuss gaming and the buzzword, the metaverse, and different platforms for creating avatars and create a unique experience to us Barbadians and what can be done. Michelle, I believe, she will be speaking more on the theatrical aspect. She understands Barbadian culture. Michael understands the technical aspects of video game design and building. And Xavier, he is the resident metaverse expert in Barbados at this point in time. So I'd like to take the speaking roles over to our three guests this afternoon. Michelle, can you do a little introduction about yourself and tell us about world building and character creation and what makes what we're doing so exciting, and what can we do with the folklore and the characters endemic to Barbados?
Hey, good afternoon, evening, everybody. So as Omar said, I'm Michelle, and I suppose by trade I'm more of a writer than a gamer. So I'm a playwright, poet, and a researcher of cultural arts, predominantly theater, but cultural arts in a broader sense as well. My role here as Omar, quite nicely put it, is to talk about the world building concepts in terms of how we can then take these cultural characters and bring them into the gaming world. In another life, many years ago, I used to be a gamer as well. I'm not going to tell you how long ago to age myself. I think I look pretty young. So I'm going to keep it that way in your minds. But once upon a time, long ago, when Nintendo Now came out, I used to be a gamer. And one of the things that always struck me about gaming would have been not just the fact that, okay, there's a character, but there's always a story behind the character. And I think one of the things that we have begun to look at in the Barbadian context and Caribbean context is that we also have characters in our world that we can use to build out these stories in contemporary games with a Caribbean or Barbadian twist. We have a very exciting kind of set of folklore characters. If you want villains, we got them. If you want heroes, we got them. If you want the more nurturing kind of characters, we have those too. And the characters come from not just the folkloric background, but also the spiritual context. So you have, for instance, within the African mythology, several different characters that you can pull on. I see Tracy's in the back there. Tracy, I saw your exhibit, by the way, yesterday, with Yamaya, Mami Wata. So there are so many ways that you can use these different characters to basically build out a narrative in a video game. The characters often have relationships with each other, but even if they don't, there are certain characters that kind of meld quite nicely and can create a fictional relationship. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do even with this project is to look at how we can bring some of those characters to life. Some of them may be folkloric characters, some of them can also be historic characters, so actual people. Imagine if, Kay mentioned in Newton and Slave Burial Ground, somebody could easily play Baby Doll, somebody could easily play Bussa, you can have someone as Nanny Gray, and kind of building your avatar around these historic characters who were real people. And if we think about even anime context, I'm not going to embarrass myself here, but in an anime context, there are some characters who I cannot remember, but there are some characters who are based on actual people. And there's no reason why we can't do a similar approach even in our Barbadian context.
And to follow on to what Michelle has just said, the idea too is not just to have a simple flat character, but to be able to develop that character within the environment. So the same way how you do in another RPG, you should be able to upgrade those skills. You should be able to, level up. You should have challenges, you should have quests, you should have different things all related to our heritage and culture, and accurate to a certain extent in order for it to be a learning experience as well as an exciting gaming experience.
Absolutely, and know that Kay said that I was to introduce Michael Watkins. He is a technical director for the Anime gaming group, design group. I'm sorry, I don't know where my head is. So Mike has been doing gaming for a very long time and video game design, and he's mastered. He is one of the experts in Barbados, not just Barbados, but the region on that. And one of the key things about learning about gaming is that video game design is that what Mike does is very specific. He is a coder, he understands how to build games. For persons who want to get involved in this, you don't need to be a coder per se. Mike and I were at a conference at the Hilton just last week, and we discussed how in video game design you had persons who were doing architecture, sound voice actors, illustrators, persons who are doing user interface and user experience to make sure that whenever you press something on the screen or on your joystick or your controller, that you had the most pleasurable experience ever. There are so many different aspects of video game design beyond coding. But Michael right here, he is the chief coder, he's the chief designer. Michael, I think I've spoken too much. Let us know a little bit more about your role and what can happen in Barbados given this context.
Well, indeed, I'm also a teacher of animation and game design, and within the core structure, you have to know every aspect. You go through your world building, you go through your story creations, you go through your character designs, your UI, you have to go through all of this stuff.
What is UI, Mike? What is UI?
A user interface, sorry. And in having all these things, sure, there's all the designers and everyone, it still all comes right back down to me, the programmer, because somebody has to make it happen. And a project like this actually started a year ago with another convention that, thanks to our times that we had, could not happen. And they already had said, well, they wanted to build a village and they wanted this. They want these physical things that they can no longer do. And we had to create this. And we said, let's kind of do an MMO event.
What's that, MMO?
MMO events. Massively multiplayer online. And then we just type event onto it. And with characters walking around, your NPCs, your non-player characters are walking around. We had, I can't remember which words you referred to the person who was testing it, but she knew nothing about gaming. And she tried to walk up to an NPC to talk to them, and they were just walking through a loop pattern of their walk, and they walked away from her, and she got vexed. I cannot believe this character walked away from you. This is not the Bajan way. You don't do that. So of course, with feedback, the programmer, I said, I'll just make sure that when you get close enough, he stops. And I think we can take it to the next level. When you walk past any NPC, morning.
Yes.
Yeah, but it comes from the writers, the people who come up with these personas that pass information down to me, and I got to be able to hold that in there. And everything will come down to You can have great scripts, great characters, great everything. You still need a backbone, you know. And this is going to be an interesting platform to build for backbone for many other events that you could possibly have, or culturally. You don't need, like, if people say, I can't afford to come to Barbados to see an event, but if you can find it online and play through it online, then it's open to the entire world. We open to the world market for that.
Absolutely, Mike is absolutely correct. And what Mike just said about the person who was testing, she is oh dear, I don't put myself in trouble. She is an intellectual authority in Barbados, and we understand that through AnimeCon and through geek culture, you know, the majority of Barbadians are muggles, and they do not quite understand the context of our fringe science and art. And it's like asking someone who is a PhD in English to ask them about rocket science. They don't understand it because the concepts are so beyond you. So sometimes when you know you're playing Final Fantasy, you're playing Breath of Fire, you're playing whatever, your NPCs walk around. And if you walk up to them, see he walks away, you just follow up and ask him a question. So this was a major sticking point. So the problem is that we face is when persons who control the purse strings for your projects, who control the budgets, do not understand what you are doing. And because of that, they retard the process of your creation with needless bureaucracy that you do not need, and it damages what you're trying to create. And a new topic, new not so new, is the metaverse. And we'll go on to Xavier about that. The metaverse is a concept which is not really new. It's got a lot of traction and buzz recently. But I think Xavier, you can tell us a little bit more about what you have done and what your thoughts are on the metaverse, where it has been and where it's going.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. My name is Xavier. I'm from a company called XR Lab. We're focused on AR and VR development.
What is AR and VR?
Augmented reality for AR. VR is virtual reality. So basically how we're going to be interacting with our virtual worlds, or rather the metaverse.
Excellent.
So what we're doing is to build these spaces that highlight elements of our culture, history, heritage, who we are as a Caribbean person, our identity. We're able to communicate things such as film, dance, music, visual arts. We've actually been seeing a lot more of the digital art. I think most of us would have heard of the NFTs. Yes. So the NFT itself is not the actual art piece. That is the token ID that is recognized by the infrastructure. And I think the more people that understand that it's not an NFT artist, we're just digital artists who are using a different way of distributing the content, which actually brings to the opportunity that we have graduating from Web 2. And by Web 2, I mean all of the platforms that we engage with, the Facebook, Twitter, the WhatsApp. You mentioned about external parties having control. This goes beyond game design, this goes beyond animation studios, this goes beyond content creation agencies. In business, there are a lot of central players that have control over what we as the general populace need access to. And as we're growing into a new innovative sphere, we're actually interacting much more with the Twitters, the WhatsApps, the TikToks. But what's happening on the flip side of things is that data is new gold. So any information that you apply to these platforms, anything that you share from content, from just a tweet or a picture of a chicken, then who's to say that is yours anymore? And that is the issue that we currently have with some Web 2 systems. How do we leverage ourselves as creators? How do we leverage the orange economy as well? Being the art forms that are available, that we can economize and find revenue from. We have these chances now in this metaverse space, and by metaverse I mean there's going to be a multitude of these entities. And where we currently are at the beginning phases, where we can now create 3D models, create virtual environments, create mechanics for persons to do collectibles, pick up power-ups, outfits that they can wear whenever they're online as well. we're moving now into a paradigm shift away from the central control that is embedded in Web 2 to something that's much more decentralized and democratized for the sake of the general populace, so that we all have a say into what happens with the future of our internet. And the future of our internet is going to be 3D. It's going to be virtual spaces. It's going to be elements of culture, art, history replicated in these scenarios. I actually started my journey as a digital artist with a bassa piece. So that managed to get me through some doors, because I think persons understood exactly what I was trying to say with the bassa piece. The symbolism of bassa, as we know it, is that we broke away. We managed to break away from a decentralized, colonized structure. Right? So in the realm of the internet, which is literally just a mirror of our lives, this is not a whole different entity. It's just a mirror or an augmentation of our lives. Right? At the end of the day, we still have to keep real life at the center. You see the RL here? So the main aim is we're just adding on to our real world, our real life, by using technology that communicates visuals, communicates stories that you guys have been so rightfully saying, communicates imagery of our Caribbean identity. It also involves the avatar creation as well, where you can have an identity that is specifically yours. Again, we're graduating from Web 2 into the 3D environment, so who's to say that we will be all having 3D avatars instead of a 2D Facebook profile? That's exactly what's going to happen, actually. And these avatars must also be able to work on different platforms, right? So the same way that we have a TikTok, Facebook, WhatsApp, these may look like different entities to some persons, but they're all owned by Facebook, right? So these avatars then also need to have the ability to transgress other metaverses, other virtual worlds, actually, I should be saying. We have been seeing a few platforms grow. They have been around for a while, but they've grown quite a bit exponentially during the pandemic. Decentraland is one. There's someone called Monaverse as well. There's endless virtual spaces, virtual metaverses that you can join onto to establish your identity. We actually have a huge opportunity, the same way that when reggae became, when the identity of reggae, the identity of the Caribbean became reggae and Bob Marley, we also have something very similar with this means of distribution, the new internet, in that we can identify the entire region, the entire Caribbean, just starting from here, right? We can also have the ability to collaborate much more, because the ethos of this entire ecosystem is that we have to stick together for this to work. We are kind of rubbing shoulders with central authorities in terms of who now has the cards to play. So there will always be a little bit of a friction, but we do need to look at each other as brothers and sisters and find ways to use this technology to communicate and connect with each other. Right? Otherwise, we'll just have players looking into the metaverse, seeing crypto. Yes, it is crypto. The same way that paper money is, the same way that I paid for a drink with paper money. It is necessary, but it's not the end all to all, right? So we do need to focus a lot more on the orange economy, sharing how persons can become involved in these virtual spaces, how to create assets as well, understanding software development, understanding augmented reality, virtual reality, and of course a bit of a Bitcoin in there as well, a bit of crypto, just because we do need to be a little bit more financially savvy. We have, sorry I'm going on so long, but we do have an issue of our nation being a little bit tech averse, a little bit against newer technologies, and it's fear. It's just fear of the unknown. But in order to get past that, we have to become more aware of these tools that we have. To some, they're toys. To others, they're development tools. Right? So we have to share and educate, bring awareness to the opportunities that lie with someone who wants to, yes, design a costume, but maybe they design a costume for the next League of Legends main character.
Absolutely. If we want those to present. I want to cross a bit. Ken, I have some questions. For some persons, for example, like myself, who is very thick-headed and doesn't understand technology, what exactly is a metaverse? And I think he has a question as well.
Well, he kind of answered my question while I was thinking it through, which is that he did talk about diversifying the different metaverses, diversifying the products that we use. So for example, You know that Facebook is a bit of a monopoly, WhatsApp is a bit of a monopoly. They've joined all these companies together, they all lead back to Zuckerberg et al. But now that certain people have decided that they're going to play with Twitter, they've decided that, well, quite a few people have off-boarded, so to speak, and have gone on to things like Mastodon and so on. What would be the opportunities for us with these newer decentralized platforms as Caribbean people?
All right, so I'll answer first. What is even the metaverse? So we're now presented with an opportunity to express ourselves in a virtual environment. The metaverse ecosystem is based on crypto, which is digital currencies. We know digital currencies. As a matter of fact, if you're doing mobile banking, technically you're kind of conducting under the infrastructure of digital currency. So you have the finances side of it, but you also have the development side of the assets that you can create. For instance, the work that we're doing with XR Lab, we've been building some spaces. There's one called Spatial that is easy to access. And all that is we take some 3D models, or assets that we would have created, and place them in the space, move them into various positions, rotate them along the X, Y, Z axis and whatnot. And by the way that we place things in a room, we can actually communicate information quite easily. I'm sure you guys are going to be interested in this in a second, right? So there's ways that you can communicate things just by the placement, what you see in the space. I would almost even just say that these metaverses are the new website domains, right? So instead of the 2D scrolling page with a bunch of URL links that you'll be able to click and head to Amazon.com, you're going to be in a virtual space that instead of scrolling, you're walking through a room. If you want to go to a contact or about page, you're opening a door. If you want to head to Amazon, but rather a Web3 platform like OpenSea, you click on a portal and you head straight over to the e-commerce activity there. So all of these elements are not new, it's just that they're being reiterated in a different perspective based on our human understanding of the tech. Because the tech is not new, VR has been around since 1970. The metaverse came up at the end of, I think, 1889, 1991 or so. Neil Stevenson, Snow Crash.
Absolutely. You're correct.
So we have quite a few opportunities, but one thing that I want to bring awareness to is that we also have external parties that are interested in our data, our code, right? Which brings me to the concept of digital colonialism. As much as we try to diversify and spread our wings into what we want to identify as Caribbean persons, we have external parties that will be coming here to set up shop because they see the value in our human resources. We have some very brilliant, smart, talented, very skilled persons, but the issue is that once they get a degree, what happens? There are no pathways that are available to a lot of us. So what we then have the chance to do is to shift the perspective and allow for pathways in the orange economy. Someone who might be in medicine, they may generate interest from a younger age by seeing an AR, an augmented reality heart, in their biology class. Right? We have very many ways to do such. I think there was a second part to the question. There's more.
I had asked about opportunities that might be available for Caribbean people in the aftermath of the Twitter mess, where people are moving to decentralized platforms like Mastodon and so on, where perhaps there's a little bit less control, where there's certain privileges that are inherent in software developed in the West, where it doesn't necessarily pick up our skin tone as well as it picks up other skin tones, or it privileges certain types of language, it dismisses things it does not understand. But here we have a platform that which is sort of like an open source version of these things. So I'm thinking about what would be the opportunities for Caribbean people now that there's maybe a place to drive the wedge in and make a space for ourselves.
So that I would say the opportunity lies in distribution of content. We have a new realm to share content in. We have a chance to re-identify ourselves as a Caribbean nation. If there are any persons who would like to be the next Bob Marley, then now is the chance for you to put out your music. There is an opportunity there. Mastodon, I do have to spend some time on that. I have heard a little bit about it, but you can tell it will be a Web3 platform, or it will be a relevant Web3 platform based on the ethos. And by that, when you go in and you see that, oh, power is given to people, they have the chance to vote. They are allowed a say in the matter. It is not decentralized. That means that the general populace has a say, which means that grouping of persons in that, let's say they have a group chat in Mastodon, you can somehow trust the validity of what's being said that is coming from truthful persons, right? Rather than an advertising agency, which is what is happening in Web2. If you run ads on social media, you are subjected absolutely to Web2 parameters. Absolutely. We have not yet seen the same thing of advertising in Web3 space to such an extent. It will be a question to ask once we start to implement more of, let's say, certain brands overseas, because we don't want a space where every time you're scrolling, you see an ad pop up here, there.
To interrupt you just a little bit, for those of us who may not be as well versed, what is the difference between Web 2 and Web 3?
Alright, so the difference between these two platforms, Web 2 was basically the social media internet, where we then allowed to share content with each other. Previous to that was Web 1, where there were particular parties that posted content, financial documents that you could access online, but you can't make changes to. So I think 1999 going into 2000s, the Y2K bug actually marked the transition period of Web 1 to Web 2. And that basically gave us a chance to share more. But that also came with other problems in that the more that people share, the more the environment has to be controlled if it is owned by a central authority, because they're always going to have a say in what happens on their platform, what happens in their house, what happens in their business. Web3 basically comes to answer the problems of centralized control, right? In that we, as the people, have to build it and make sure that this version of internet works. It will get there eventually, as it is in the budding phases. But the aim is that it is for the people, built by the people, for the people, also ubiquitous, meaning that you can use it on any platform, VR, you can use it on your mobile, you can use it on your iPad, your desktop. Anytime also as well with Web3, anytime you engage with the domains or these virtual sites, the content will always be there, right? So it's not a matter of one single server shutting down and then the whole thing is done, which is a huge problem for a lot of Web2 platforms. But with Web3, we now have servers around the world that can handle the workload that's necessary to make these virtual worlds spin.
Well, thank you, Xavier. I would like to ask a question.
I was wondering if I could actually jump in.
Absolutely, mate. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, going into the future, sure, we've got all these platforms where we're going to be able to share content and share stuff and be on that platform. But what we have to look at here is the building the platforms. So I'm invested in education, and the kids are going to be the ones using the platforms, but who's to say that the kids aren't the ones making the platforms? That's what I'm trying to get is, and right now there's only one public school teaching animation and game design, and I teach at 2 private schools. Private schools have an easier time at it, and at the newest private school I'm at, the classroom I'm teaching is called Neptage, which I don't know if anyone knows. Neptage was working on the first search engine that came out.
Absolutely.
So we do have a history in Barbados of being forerunners.
Absolutely.
And and why don't we have more of these programs going on in Barbados teaching the kids? Because they are, as they always say, they are the future. And we need them to lead in with your VR. I mean, who knows? He's talking VR. We don't know if we're going to get an implant in 4 years that it's going to make that obsolete, because as soon as you do deek, and I can see it, and we don't know what's going to happen. So we need to be getting people in on the ground floor. Start right now. I start with kids young, and if they want to go off to school and get it at a high-tech level, let them do that. But they need this base. And of course, with making programs, we take our culture into it as well.
Absolutely. Now you said that, like Elon Musk recently had an article out and is discussing he was going to create a device which you just implant on to help people be mobile walk again. And that's our thing. So for those who don't understand, zombie apocalypse is coming.
I thought that was COVID.
Yeah.
If I can just
Absolutely,
really quickly,
Michelle,
as you said, Mike, we're taking our culture, and one of the things that has happened to us historically through institutions like Hollywood is that we have been represented by someone else.
Absolutely.
And it has led to a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of, I don't even know what other word to use, but you hear about voodoo, you hear about the black magic and these things, and you automatically have a very negative perception because of how we have been portrayed through colonial times, through Hollywood, and these kind of larger entities. And here we have a chance now to, again, market our culture, export our culture, but this time we are doing it ourselves. So we have a chance to not only create these characters, but we do our own research. We look at the characters from, and I use this word very cautiously, but an authentic point of view, where we are now representing self instead of someone else representing us.
Michelle, that's a brilliant point, which is what Kay and I were getting at. I've mentioned in a few panels before that the Animecon Design Group, we'll be creating video games. And with persons like Michelle, her knowledge base, and Kay, their knowledge base, I'm so sorry. Their collective knowledge base is so invaluable. We have to deconstruct what was forced onto us by mainstream media. I know that we can be able to get a voice. I also mentioned Animecon Studios, which will be coming out next year. We want to be able to push our own voices as Caribbean people, so persons understand that what was being touted in that James Bond movie about voodoo is not accurate. So we can have our own. You like that movie? I'm sorry.
Yes, we're not all from Jamaica.
Bad Jamaican. So we can get our voices out. Netflix is actively looking for content. A lot of these Netflix is once the premier online provider for movies. Now you have your HBO Max, you have your Paramount Plus, is it? We have Disney Plus, we have Prime, whatever it is for Amazon, Prime Video. So, and these guys, they are going to need content. And Hollywood's been recycling this crap for a long time. And it's now time, it's our time now to get out there and I get passionate. And I've been drinking, I'm sorry. So I get passionate about these things. Yes. Keep hydrated.
Yeah.
You quiet over there. So, we need to get our voices out there as Caribbean people with our own stories, because our history, our ancestry, the things that we see every day are so important. And they're just as important as seeing Thor in Marvel Comics, or seeing the Greek gods, or seeing the Roman gods, or whatever have you, in all these movies which we find so exciting. We have a culture which is just as exciting, or even more exciting, and the stories have not been told. So, Michelle, let us speak more about some of what we can get into, what we can look forward to in the future with our own culture.
I think two really good examples, and I know some people may disagree with me, but two very good examples of people taking control are Bollywood and Nollywood. They have literally gone, okay, look, I have a phone. Hey, I want you to do this, so suddenly you are getting all of this content coming out of these two countries where they are representing themselves. We have historic stories here, we have contemporary stories here. I'm not going to go into the actual production quality of Hollywood or Nollywood or Bollywood, because
perhaps that helps identify them as well.
Yes, that's the thing, because I'm familiar with both the Nigerian and particularly the Hindu Indian cultures, because my family's Nigerian and I lived in Trinidad with the Indian population, the Indian community. And to be honest, as absolutely hilarious as the cultures may seem when we look at it on film, they're very, very much an interesting representation of the reality. Granted, it's exaggerated sometimes, but it is a representation of themselves. And if we now come to the Barbadian context, a lot of people didn't like it, but let's be real. Badness represented a segment of our community, right? That particular, that came out just before COVID, I think. Porgy and Murder represented a segment of our community. And one of the things that I think drew people to those shows wasn't only the story or the attempt at humor, but it's the fact that you were also hearing yourself. You're hearing what is a Bajan accent within a particular context, because you know that there's several Bajan accents. But you're hearing an accent that is very familiar. You're seeing stories that, you know, you might hear somebody tell you a story down the road. So it's not something that seems foreign. People like to see themselves. Where the challenge comes for us, if you look at Bollywood and Nollywood, they have a market of what, millions?
Economies of scale is much larger.
Yeah, so their country, they can support themselves really. You know, you go out, you sell, they came out as DVDs. You know, you sell a DVD, yeah, you can make back your money easily because you have that skill. We don't necessarily have that skill in Barbados. So the thing that we now have to navigate is how to put our culture out there, but also market it not just to ourselves, but within the region and internationally. How do we market our culture? So there's a kind of a fine line, because at the same time, you don't want to run the risk of bastardizing the culture, watering it down, diluting it. So you have to find that kind of middle ground. I think when we did that convention last year, the theater production that we would have done was done in Caribbean dialects, predominantly Bajan and Trinidadian dialects. But what we did is that we had subtitles. So anyone who's watching, who's not familiar or not here, their ears are not familiar with that dialect, they're able to get an understanding based on reading the subtitles, which is kind of what we do with anime. They speak not in English, it is Japanese, right? And you are watching it, you are completely enjoying it. And you're either, okay, yeah, so you can watch the dubbed version, but you can also watch the subbed version. And I think that is something that we need to look into doing with our work as well. You can either dub it or sub it. And then that makes it, you know, wider reach in terms of your audience base. So there's a lot that we can do, but my main thing has always been, do not water down who we are. Because when you watch those animes, when you go into the RPG games, they're not trying in any way to water down their culture. In fact, they are doing the same thing that Nollywood and Bollywood do. They escalate it, they exaggerate it, and say, this is who we are, and we are playing into that narrative. And we have to come to a point where we play into our own, but we figure out how to enter into that market using the tools that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already done. Use it for our own benefit. And I think that, you know, the metaverse context, the project from last year kind of gave us a window to see what was possible in terms of exporting, because that was an international convention. We had people from across the globe logging into the platform, the app that we had, right? Across, and I think it was really well done. We had all of the RPG characters, they're not RPG characters, what are they called? The NPC characters. The NPC characters. They were mostly speaking in dialect. Well, dialect bubbles, they weren't speaking. But we had the dialect written. Yeah, so you still had that exporting of the culture. And I think that that's something that we need to look into.
Absolutely.
How we can develop that and really push it even more. But someday.
If I could interject, Mike actually said something very important as it relates to that. We need to start from grassroots. We need to start where the seeds are grown and build from there. So from primary, we could start to implement game development classes and educational scenarios for persons to get access to the knowledge and information. Mike, you mentioned that you're trying to do stuff with St. Gabriel's, is it?
No, it's Lockerbie and Convent.
Convent, okay. So if we could have more of these programs spread around schools that grant persons the ability to learn the software or learn how to become a part, I think we can definitely begin the process. But until that, we're just going to be telling persons, hey, guess what? You know that we could improve things by doing this. You're just going to be preaching to people. But we have to start from the grassroots.
Absolutely.
Also with, back to what I said earlier about us making the platforms and on the launching of that product, we could not go through Google because Google has a lot of restrictions. For one, we cannot monetize through Google yet. The Trinidad can, many other islands can monetize. We cannot from Barbados. So something has to be done about that. And I had to look back. We're stuck because here we are, we've already said we're going to do this project, and now we've got no platform. I had to look back to old technology, WebGL, which is horrible, but I looked at it and said, you know, it's old and horrible, but it works.
It works.
That's all I care. It works. And every time we hit one wall, I look at Omar. Omar's like, Mike, what are we going to do? And I'm like, don't worry, Omar. He's like, I'm not worried. I got you here, Mike. Let's know. And I call him back after. Omar, check this out. He's like, you got it working, right? You know, you got to be quick on your feet and be smart in that.
And just to let you all know, over the course of that project, which is about 6 months long, I had about 15 nervous breakdowns. I'm just letting you know.
Sounds like you're in software dev.
No. I was a businessman. I was dealing with the muggles who did not understand this. And I remember one day I just sat down on this, and if I hadn't heard her pull out, I would have pulled it out. It was terrible.
He
I
was my
witness,
buffer.
I can testify this is the truth.
Just one comment coming out of what Michelle said, or one or two comments really. I understand that there is an idea that in order to make other people understand this and understand what we mean, there is the temptation to subtitle everything. And I will tell you, I'm actually one of those people that I turn on the subtitles for North American reviews and so on purpose because maybe I am old and deaf, but I prefer to read. So I will literally watch movies that I can understand what's going on in subtitles because, you know, sometimes they raise the music a little high and you don't hear it.
Absolutely.
But there's a part of me that thinks I should not have to put subtitles on my work for people to understand me because you know what? They don't. And I think that is something that we need to understand. If we're marketing it for us and we're marketing it for the people in our diaspora, yes, it is true that there is money to be made at a certain point from interaction with the Western diaspora, but to be perfectly honest, if they really want it, they also make the effort to learn it. They will even, to a certain extent, when they are culturally appropriating what is ours, rename it to suit themselves. So Bantu knots become something else entirely. What did they call them again? Space buns. But that's the point. We don't necessarily need to pander to that because the reality is they are not pandering to us. That is one point. With regard to the remark Michelle made about being able to just take your video camera and just do that, we need to actually encourage that storytelling. As Michael says, from as soon as they can hold the camera phone. I did an exhibition at Sela Primary on Monday, just a little independence thing, and watched the whole 7 and 8-year-olds with their mobile phones and they're taking a picture of the artifact and then they're taking a picture of the descriptive panel because they're interested but they're recording it. And I think that if they've already got that facility with the phone and that ability to organize where they say, I need to link the panel to the object so that I'm telling a story, they've already got the basic skill set where they can be thinking in terms of a storyline now instead of waiting until they're 16 and then saying, so how are you going to tell a story? We've got a program we've been running for 2 or 3 years now with the community college students where they come in and they do an immersive internship during the summer. And when we tell them, you know, after you get to know the museum, pick an object and tell a story, everybody who's been on Instagram and TikTok and whatever doing the dog suddenly forgets how to use a camera. But I think if they're comfortable with that storytelling from early, that's something we can be doing. And we can have our own wood iron, I don't know what we can call it. It can be Nollywood and Bollywood and all that things because they go already. Bridging wood. But basically, if they can use those simple tools and create those things, so can we. I mean, right now, I follow Seth Excel Bovell on Instagram. I just follow Lord Zen on and off every now and then. He just sees something that's getting irritated and I'll follow and then I'll follow him back a little while later because every now and then he does stuff behind like a little. But the point is they're out there, they're making a success of this. They're using very, very simple tools, but they're making a statement, they're putting us out there, and more people need to be encouraged to do that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you talked about the simple tools. And I mentioned this on a panel last week where I've heard kids I was teaching, and they're like, well, I want to do it, but I'm waiting for my parents to get this rig and this computer, waiting for the upgrade. The project we did last year was on a 10-year-old i3 laptop that I use for everything in breakdown and whatever. I didn't care. The tools don't have to be that amazing to just get up and start doing stuff. I've got students, all my students bring their own laptops to class and they use what they have. You don't have to be in a big, huge studio to say, I'm getting into gaming. No, that comes down the line. Right now, it's just learn the basics with what you have. Doesn't take much. If you use a cell phone camera to just start doing stuff, do that. Use a cheap laptop, do whatever you can.
I agree. I remember a few years back, I took 3 cosplayers to a studio in Belleville. Mike was there, and they were dressed as Josie and the Pussycats, and they were just playing their instruments and whatnot. And Mike, with a green screen, created an entire environment for them.
And the drums.
But they had drums. Mike actually inserted drums. So we had one young lady, she was just doing this, beating at nothing. And Mike put some drums in, and the studio was not a Hollywood blockbuster, industrial like magic studio. It was a studio
Colin Fox.
It was Colin Fox in a small building in Belleville. So we can do it. It can be done.
Basically, the only limit is your imagination and your creativity, which is a fundamental thing. Use what you have to get what you want, which is perhaps not the best illusion right now because of where it originally came from, but the point stands. Basically, use what you have at your disposal to get where you're going. Make relationships, make connections. Networking is everything. There are lots of people out there who are enthusiastic about the creative industries in Barbados. And basically, when we work together, Barbados does great things.
Absolutely.
Do we have any questions from the audience or?
Nixon, I see you getting there bright and early this time.
Yeah.
Tapping back to film, I watched Into the Darkness that was filmed here, and there was a bunch of people that were negative about it because of the zombie aspect. A lot of people were saying that it was very demonic. And I was shopping for supplies in the Andash, and I heard a woman saying that she had Halloween in her class, and one of the children's parents told her that she's trying to put the devil in her child for wanting to dress up as it could be a ladybug, but she just right there. How are we supposed to shape minds? And it's not fair to someone who filmed a movie during a pandemic and did all the special effects himself, and then get such a negative response from the locals because they just don't like the topic. So what are we supposed to do, or how should we shape society's mind so that we're just not doing all this for nothing?
Well, what I would tell you from the start is AnimeCon, everything AnimeCon represents, pop culture, is still fringe in Barbados. And you will have the naysayers, you will have, as I call them, muggles, I call them Philistines, I call them everything. Because they don't understand, they're ignorant. And when you let an ignorant person bring you down, that causes commensurate damage to you. If someone is to tell you maybe your work is not required, it's somebody who understands your craft. So the problem is that we're a new culture. We are a new society, we are a new industry struggling for acceptance to show that entertainment goes beyond walking a back up over. And when I like walking a back up over, we must understand that there is more to culture than that. And as we get out there, as we come out there fighting and punching, the harder it will be for the muggles to ignore us. And we just need to keep on going out there. It's been a long, hard climb. We've been here at Raycon from the beginning. And we know it was almost impossible to find funding and sponsorship at first. I remember I was in finance, I was a banker, I was a wealth manager for a large company here in Barbados, clients all over the world, whatever have you. And someone said to me, Omar, when you want to get that animation nonsense? You know, when you want to do all that, when you're making all this money from all these clients all over the world, yada, 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 yada. And he brought me down really bad because he's an idiot, he's ignorant. But now, when AnimeCon comes, he comes to my ear, I got to teach this to my children, and then the words I use are not appropriate for here, no. And then I because Kay will put me out. I don't want that, right? So, you know, we have to ignore the naysayers, the ignorant, and as time goes on, they begin to realize we're not going anywhere, and our industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we are not going anywhere.
If I could interject, so
Wait, one second.
No, I really want to say this. Apart from the naysayers, right? Education is, as Omar says, there is a certain amount of ignorance involved. As Michelle says, we have the opportunity to recenter how that Western interpretation has colored those opinions. A lot of this is about education as well. What people are calling obia and witchcraft, all sorts of things, is really traditional medicine that we brought with us from Africa, which has come through the generations. This is not about sticking pins in voodoo dolls. This is about, I have some bad feels and I drink some ginger tea. When I say that to a parent, that is what I am teaching your child. I am not teaching them voodoo. I am teaching them things that you yourself are practicing in your home all the time. The noni, the bush teas, all of that is things that you have grown up with, that you are doing. And what you are doing is letting somebody else reframe that for you when you need to think for yourself, and you need to recognize that what we are teaching is what you are also teaching, but you are just hearing the word Halloween and you are sort of running off without thinking, but how is it that, because for me, Halloween is an opportunity to teach what, yes, sometimes it's a little scary, but it is what is also culturally appropriate to us and things that we have always done, and sort of demystify that. No, you can come.
that was well said, well said. I was going to reiterate on the educational aspect. Fear is what drives a lot of the ignorance that we engage with. So to combat that, we have to share, we have to communicate, we have to share things with people, but not in a way that it is overbearing or we're preaching at anyone. Persons can only digest as much as they can in that moment. But as long as we focus on sharing, constantly sharing information with each other, the ignorance will eventually die down over time. Right? It is I want to say, and forgive me anyone, it's a generational curse, that level of ignorance that we face, that can be eradicated in time. We have a very, we have a younger generation, Generation Z and Alpha. Anyone below like 15 years?
Yes, that's it. 3 years in.
I'm 51.
So anyone that is under 17 there have an understanding, right? So we just have to communicate to the older generation that the unwillingness to absorb new information is only going to cause a detriment in the long run. The younger generation understands that already, so they're trying to keep up to date with all the new tech, all the new gamified experiences, but the older generation is exhibiting a little bit of, no, we're not interested in that right now. But it's going to go there. So we have to then consider, are we going to just let everyone be ignorant, or can we just gradually feed them the macaroni pie that they like, rather than the Alfredo?
I just want to say that I understand Shani from the writer's perspective as well. I grew up in a time when watching Pokemon was considered to be demonic, right? I was not allowed to watch Pokemon in my house as a child. I was not allowed to watch anything out of Japan, quite frankly, because anything that appeared to have been magic was demonic, but Tom and Jerry was okay.
Violence.
You know, Roadrunner was okay, Bugs Bunny, all those things were fine, but no, anything else is demonic. And as an educator, for those who don't know, I teach at Barbados Community College in the Theatre Arts Department. And every year without fail, because the majority of our productions are original productions, not because I think I'm creative, but because we have no money to pay the copyright for actual productions. So, you know, I write these plays, and most of my plays are historic or heritage-based. We produce most of them here at the museum. And if I count the number of plays that we've done here, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same number of plays that every time I've had to explain to a parent or had a conversation with a parent because they don't want their child in the play. We actually had a play called Bush Memories, which was about Obeah. And a parent came to me and said, I don't want my child in this because it is not in line with my Christian values. And I said, oh, so you don't drink bay leaf tea? Because all your son is playing is, you know, a bush doctor. He's prescribing herbal remedies. That's it. We had recently the Ducky Tours, where I had a parent call me and interrogate me because Ducky Tours? No, we're Christian. And had I known that this is what it was, she would not have been involved. And I said, well, ma'am, this is by the way on the night before the show or the day of the show, I'm having this conversation, trying to make sure that she does not completely up my show museum because that's a whole stop. And having that conversation constantly, and one of the things that I've realized much of what you're saying out there is that you have to pick your battles. There are some parents who will say, okay, let me see what it's about and carry on. And there are other parents, I just leave them be because their children, whether they like it or not, are involved in that culture, right? Their children are questioning the values that they were brought up with. So when you come up and you say that, you can't, I don't think you can say to anybody now, teenagers, that Pokemon is demonic. Like the majority of them are gonna look at you like,
You're demonic.
you're an idiot.
You're an electric ghost.
Like, what? Yeah, you know, what? Nobody's doing that anymore. And I think over time, it is changing. There are a lot fewer people now than I think when I was younger. Who are resistant to the culture. And it's going to take a while to change, and it's frustrating.
Nixon, I'm sorry, guys, we have to have our last question before we move on to the next event.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Nixon. Just one quick point of what Omar has said previously about Hollywood and how these recent years are just recycling the same old material over and over again. I think that is well just that because what it does when it create a parallel with Hollywood, whereas others are saying we turn this and we create our own stuff automatic. So I said that industry from Zayo, if it can. Like we have been fed that industry for many years. 100. Precisely. So I am on the opinion now that it's time for us to have our own thing and actually take that industry. That's all I have to say.
I want to jump on that where with Omar's talk of Netflix and how there are many more opportunities with Netflix now. My brother works for Hollywood doing special effects. I have not seen any of the shows he's worked on recently, and he's moving down here to start his company in Barbados and train some agents to do that. But I looked and said, I watched K-dramas and K-fantasies. And Korean market, I really got into it thanks to Netflix and COVID. I would never got into that without what you said just now. I'm tired of this stuff.
Correct.
It's the same old stuff all over again. And I get these shows, and I love it. It's 1 hour episodes, they do 10, and that's it. They don't come back to it. There's no season 2. They wrap it up. They don't do 10 seasons, 12 seasons, something you're going, what did it come up next? You know,
To finish off the point, and then I will leave it there. For me, it's a lot heartbreaking because a lot of the franchises that we work on are basically getting rebooted and reformatted, and it's not the same. I don't know why they keep doing it. So, seeing that there are basically being, I don't want to say ruined, but they are being ruined, it has forced me to look inward in terms of locally. That's how I found Walmart, that's how I found Stray Dogs, same barriers. Very sorry, Walmart, I think you're great until you bring out some more material.
Don't worry, I got some stuff coming this year, you don't panic.
Great, artists is obviously my favorite because of the cultural aspect of it. So it is thanks to Bollywood doing the work that you're doing that it has forced playing me to the England. So I say this, them and let them do their thing and do work.
I understand. I agree with you, Nixon. And one day, hopefully sooner rather than later, our own products will be up there as well. So they will be forced to pivot as well because they're all a money game. And Hollywood is just as unforgiving as Wall Street. So when they realize that the crap they keep on rebooting is not getting the dollars they need, they will continue to go further afield. Game of Thrones, for example, was so popular on HBO because they broke away from the Hollywood mold of what was happening. I was watching some I'm not sure if it was Korean or Japanese zombie flicks on Netflix, and I was happy to know that I didn't know who was going to die next. You know? But you saw the code in your head. Why is he starting with the first? It's like you just don't know. And then everybody's dead, you know? Everybody is. Or Jesus, you know? So I agree with you. And guys, thank you, Xavier, Mike, Michelle, Kay, Omar Kennedy. Thank you for coming on. You guys have been great. We love you all. Thank you for coming to Cosplay. This is our last panel for the day, yes?
We have a one-on-one with our special guest a little bit. We have a one-on-one with a special guest who's being conferenced in by Zoom just a little bit later. It's a surprise, but it is a Barbadian who has done really, really well off of cosplay culture. So we're going to talk to her in a little bit. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go and strap our stuff on the stage and let the cosplayers do their thing. That's all for now.
Bye, guys.